to another episode of Keeping Up with APID. We're back from our little hiatus after the summer. This is now in October, so it was, I guess, a longer hiatus than it was a little hiatus.
The writers were on strike.
Right, right. So, in case you forgot, I'm Chris, he, him, his pronouns. I'm the director of the Mosaic Cross Cultural Center, current chair of the PIA Task Force.
Hi, y'all. Welcome back. It's Anoop. Pronouns she, her, hers. I'm currently the AS Director of Academic Affairs. And what else do I want to say? Happy school year. That's all I got.
Hi, everyone. It's Sharon, she, her, hers, the program coordinator for Mosaic Cross Cultural Center. We're in October, so I hope everyone had a good summer. And I hope folks are taking care of themselves as they're either entering midterms or finishing midterms.
I think we just live witnessed the picture.
Yeah.
You did. I'm sorry.
You're fine.
It's fine. We're keeping it.
You're fine. We're keeping
No,
that in.
Cut it out. Oh my
No, but
God.
Sharon was talking. We can't cut it out.
Yeah.
So
and you can see life is happening.
life is happening. I mean, we are still in the midst of a COVID world. We're not quite post-COVID yet, but we're in the midst of it. But time waits for no one. So we have to start the school year again. So since the last time we had a video, school year started, classes have started. Of the three of us, Anoop's the only one that's an enrolled student. But how's it going so far, Anoop?
Wow, I feel like this is such a one-on-one conversation right now. Viewers are just gonna watch me rant. But really quickly, 10 points to whoever can guess where I'm on campus. I'm being safe. I have my mask if anyone approaches me. But yeah, this school year, it's been rough. I'm not gonna lie. There's been a lot going on with associated students, with like student government advocacy efforts, because there's so much wrong with how the pandemic has disrupted our lives, and how those short-term solutions aren't good for the long-term time frame that the pandemic is running until spring semester is honestly messing with my mind. I go outside and I'll see people like in big groups with no masks on, and my first thought is, and it's a really selfish thought, I'll say it, please wear a mask. I want my senior year in person. Please. Like, I want to graduate in person. That's actually my biggest fear right now, that I won't get my graduation, that my parents won't be able to come and cheer me on and see me graduate. But yeah, classes have been, on the downhill. There's this new thing professors do where they record you while they take your test. And that's been like my biggest advocacy issue right now.
I think we not to be critical of anyone per se, but we have an opportunity, like present tense we have an opportunity to rethink our pedagogy in higher education, like to rethink how people learn, to rethink how people assess their learning. Clearly taking tests the traditional way does not work for a Zoom platform. We need to rethink how people assess their learning, because to be honest, from an equity standpoint, it wasn't really working that well beforehand anyway. Yeah, in-person tests are just the way we've always done it, but there are always going to be a segment of students that get left behind just because they're a bad test taker for various reasons, including bias in the test. And honestly, answering multiple choice questions on a Scantron is probably not the best way to do that job. So it's like we have a chance right now to completely rethink how people assess their learning, and yet that's not necessarily the direction most of us are going in for some reason.
Yeah, and we don't actually have to think so far outside of the box, right? There are majors, right, where even in math, right, there are word problems. Where you have 5 questions and you get a person to write short answers in, right? And they can't cheat on that. Like they literally have to write something out or type something out, right? So if you're gonna give someone a test, a multiple choice, maybe, like Chris is saying, is not the best thing, but we also don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's a way to get someone to show you that they've learned the subject, right? Whether that's a short answer, whether that's a oral presentation, right? A combination of an essay and an oral presentation, um, giving you a pre-recorded video of them, sharing like a assignment, or recording just their uh, their voice and sharing it, so you get to listen, right? Like if your students aren't comfortable being on camera, right? Like those are we have technology. We clearly have different ways to see if someone has learned the subject. I I completely agree, and it's also, you know we're in a time where a lot of folks are feeling very self-conscious and feeling body dysmorphia because they're having to see themselves, right? And if test taking already gives students anxiety, and then imagine you're seeing yourself take a test, right? I just can't even imagine what it's like to be a college student or any student right now, any grade or level. Yeah.
I mean, I could literally rant about this all day. I've been doing a lot of research. There's actually a study from MIT that says students in the same conditions, same test, took it online with this proctoring service, and then took it in person with like the professor watching them, and people in person got 10% higher scores. So it's like, even though they say they're mimicking the in classroom experience, they're really not. Also, the software is inherently racist. Students with darker skin, the camera won't like recognize their face. You literally have to put a lamp like right up at your face, and then I'll say, "Oh, facial recognition, like check."
Yeah, and if you've never had that
Yeah.
experience before, try shining a flashlight in your face while taking a test sometime. It does not work well. Like, yeah. Also touching on, what Sharon brought up about the body dysmorphia and the self-consciousness and self-esteem issues. Like having a camera that you can see your own image in all the time is like the worst. Like I I find myself playing with my hair or like adjusting my body all the time in meetings because I don't like the way I look on camera. And like this part of my body right here, like I try to like play with, like try to hide that so often. Like in meetings you'll see me go like this. Like it's the worst. It's the worst having like a video of yourself on all the time.
Chris, I'm not laughing at like the
Yeah, I
thing,
know.
but when you did that, it like mimicked the like "I'm coming for you" sort of action.
Okay, that's
I
why I
was
laughed
like,
as well.
damn.
Because I just imagine Chris in a meeting. All of a sudden, he's like, someone is talking, and they're like, "Oh my god, Chris didn't like what I said there."
It's like, oh, no, it's not normally that aggressive. I was obviously emphasizing a point, but like you'll see me fidget and shift around all the time in meetings because I just don't like the way I'm sitting. I don't like the way I come across. I don't like the way the lighting looks on my end. Like whatever, right? Like
Yeah. Yes. These are all valid things, and yet here we are, right? I mean, sometimes when Chris and I do workshops, we'll have maybe 2 people leave their camera on, and so we're just literally presenting to like
yeah,
1 or 2 students.
silhouettes
Yeah, and then otherwise we're just
or
presenting to
names.
names or pictures or someone's iPhone name, right? And so I understand, like, I mean, I do appreciate like seeing someone's face, so at least I can feel like someone's there listening to us, right? But I also am not gonna be like, can you all please turn on your cameras? Like, I feel subconscious, right? Because I want to be mindful that we live in a time where it's so hard to give consent, right? And one of the ways that we can take ownership over how we're presented or how we're not presented is giving us an option, giving us a choice, right? Um, and if there was a video that went viral a couple weeks ago of a professor who started like kind of breaking down during their class, saying like, hey, can someone please turn on the camera because I haven't had human contact in like a month or something like that. And one person turned on their camera, and this professor or teacher or whatever started kind of crying. I think it's, we also live in that reality, right? But I think it's also like, how can we find support systems, right? I think we're like Chris is saying, like we need to get creative in how we support each other, but also like creating those boundaries for ourselves, because right now, like our school and our home life and our work and our home life are completely the same. And so sometimes all I can really control is keeping my camera off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with everything you just said. I think that the biggest issue of the pandemic isn't even the virus itself, it's the issue underneath that isolation, people not feeling like they can connect with folks. That's why they're going out and they're like maybe behaving in unsafe ways because they want that human connection. This is me wrote a book about loneliness, and his name's Vivek Murthy, and he literally said that the biggest disease in the United States is not obesity, it's loneliness. And how, like, in this age of social media, we can really not, like, we don't really know how to connect with folks, especially Gen Z people like me who got Snapchat when they were in middle school.
Yeah, Snapchat may not have been the best invention. So, uh, uh, for reasons we don't need to talk about, um, Anoop, I know that you watched The Social Dilemma, and I watched The Social Dilemma. I think we're trending pretty closely to that part of the conversation right now. Um, like like first of all, if you haven't seen The Social Dilemma yet on Netflix, it is an interesting film to watch. Um, I don't want to say like go out of your way to watch it. Like watch it when you can, whatever. But like it's an interesting film to watch. It really is. And like the circumstances for me watching it was that like I had to watch it for like something that we were planning for something. So like it was kind of an assignment on my end, and I had to do it, and like I had a meeting coming up that I hadn't done it for yet. So like I just kind of threw it on. And I was like, I'll just watch it tonight. And like initially, like I wasn't really paying attention to it, but then like by the end of the film, I was like enraptured. Like it was a very like attention grabbing kind of a film. Um, but yeah, in it they do mention this like idea of like how you know connecting with folks in real life and connecting with folks on social media is not necessarily the same thing. And like and I'm trying to be very careful because like I think it's very easy for people to say social media is the worst thing that's ever been invented. I don't agree with that particular sentiment. I do think that there are benefits to social media. Obviously, we're recording a video podcast right now. Like, we do exploit this technology
Don't
for
turn this off,
don't turn
please.
this off for good things, right? So I don't want to say it's the worst thing in the world. I think that's kind of a like a nothing kind of a line, but it is important to be critical of what it is, um, which I think they do talk about in the Social Dilemma film, and is a very interesting thing to watch.
I I haven't watched it, right? But I think I've had this conversation a lot with folks about how, you know, from like MySpace or even before that, whatever, I'm MySpace, right? Generation,
Friendster.
I don't know what that is, but there was something that led to people kind of going, oh, if I have a presence, right, outside of my life, I need to maybe present myself a certain way, right? And people look to magazines and models and media in the same way, right? And I don't think it ever allowed folks to curate, like, or it allowed folks to curate the life that they wanted and the image that they wanted, right? And I think that's still carried on. I think that president has still carried on in that regard, where our Instagram pictures, right, if they're not edited or have a filter on it, or you haven't posed a certain way, right, um people just like, oh, I really like this picture of myself, but it doesn't work with my theme on Insta, so I'm not gonna post it. And I'm like, why? Just post it. Like, if you're feeling yourself, like, do it, right? Like, I'm the type of person who, like, as I'm scrolling, if people have like every picture of them as a selfie, I will like the heck out of every single picture, because that's what you want to present. That's who you are. Great, right? So like, it makes me go, like, if that's what you're putting out there, then that's what you want to put out there. And the challenge is to not think about it, right? Like, at some point, if there's a picture of yourself or your dog that's not the best picture out of everything that you have in your camera roll, like, maybe you should just post it, because it humanizes you too. I definitely have pictures of, like, that are from photo shoots, but then I definitely have stuff where I'm like, especially on my stories, where I'm just sitting on the couch, like, eating ice cream. Why not? I like ice cream. That's what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with pretty much everything y'all have said. I think social media is evil. Like, I think it's inherently evil. I think it's just been developed in such a way that it's because like the tech moguls out there, they're just, I don't know. Okay, I literally watched Social Dilemma like a week ago, so it's still fresh in my mind. I would say watch it if you can, because it's really the spooky film of this season. Like, you don't need to watch a horror movie, just watch this and you'll be like, damn, like that's what they're doing. But yeah, like it goes into a lot of issues with just social media, and then also like going back to the proctoring thing. When you are being filmed, you don't know who's on the other side of that screen watching you, and you also don't know if that data is being recorded. You don't know if that data is going to be shared. You don't know what happens to it. So like my biggest issue is just how can we be more transparent with this use of social media, and how can we do it in a way that's like positive for everyone. The film talks about something called Snapchat dysmorphia, where young girls are like going to plastic surgeons with how they look like on a Snapchat filter and saying like, make me look like that in real life, and that's scary
Mm-hmm.
that no
Well,
one's doing anything about it really.
and not to put the onus on Snapchat necessarily, even though Snapchat is kind of a douchey app. Not to put the onus on Snapchat entirely. Like, this has always been a problem in, ever since plastic surgery has been around. It's just so much easier now to do it when there's Snapchat, or other filters, like Instagram filters or whatever, or just iPhone filters. Um, and one of the other things that like you made me think of too, Anoop, when we were talking about the proctoring, is that like if your only solution to people cheating is having somebody set up a webcam or two webcams, like as somebody who like reads a lot about like magic and reads a lot about gambling, like it's so easy to cheat those things. Like if I have a webcam and I know that the camera only shoots from here to here, having a cheat sheet right here is not that hard. Like it's really not, not to say we don't encourage cheating, but
No,
like
do not cheat.
do not cheat. But it's not that hard to like if this camera is the only solution you have for
Right.
proctoring a test, then people are just gonna find a way around it real easy.
Yeah. Yeah. I will also say, before it leaves my mind completely, for folks who really want to get plastic surgery because you think, it will benefit you, right? And it's what you really like, you've planned it out, you've thought about it, right? And it's not because you it's not for someone else, but it's for yourself. Go ahead and do it. Get that plastic surgery, right? But we're just saying, or I for me, don't get it to please other people. Don't get it because you want to, aim to be an image of something that you think will make you better or happier, or achieve goals that some famous person has set out, because if you look like them, you'll get there too, right? Don't do it for that reason. Do it for yourself, because you're like, I really don't, my nose got broken, I don't like the way it looks now, and it affects my health or whatever, right? Like, just saying, for me, it's your body, do what you want to do.
Yeah. I want to mention something real quick. I don't know if y'all seen those like Instagram pictures of like people wearing makeup just posting their mask and like the makeup residue it has in it. And it's like, I don't wear that makeup for you. I wear it for myself. And the fact that I'm covering it up with a mask, that proves I'm wearing it for myself,
Right.
And I thought that was like a really powerful message.
Yes, to that vein, right? To that vein, like wearing makeup or wearing, or dressing a certain way, right? Ultimately, it should be for yourself, because it makes you feel good, because it makes you confident, right? And because you want to do it, right? And I think that's that's the important message out of all of this, right? And I think that's why it really irks me when it's like, no, you have to keep your camera on while you take this test, right? Because it takes away that choice. And I think it should be about, especially when people feel like they don't have choices right now, that they don't have stability in their life, that they can't have a say over, whether they can go out or hang out with loved ones, right? Or they're missing life milestone events, right? Like, give them the choice of whether they want to keep their camera on or not.
Totally. Thanks y'all for engaging in this awesome discussion. We're going to be coming back with regular episodes of Keeping Up with APIDA. Now that hopefully most of us have gotten our bearings a little bit. I do want to say too, we're going to go to a great interview that we recorded with our special guest Grace Pang, and Parl's going to join us for that as well. And we're going to have a chance to talk a little bit about Proposition 16, because the general election is coming up, and I think that's an important proposition, particularly for PETA folks to talk about. So enjoy that conversation. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Keeping Up with APIDA podcast series. It's been a quick minute because, school started and folks have been busy, but, we're happy to be back. We are joined with a special guest in this segment to talk about a very important proposition on the ballot this year for the general election. I guess we'll just turn it over to Grace. Grace, if you want to introduce yourself.
You can also take that sip.
You can take a sip too. That's fine.
Sorry, y'all. I'm kind of nervous. Haven't done like a podcast, but this is a really nice change, and to connect with folks from campus, on campus, like wherever you are. My name is Grace. I am a student at San Jose State. I guess I have upperclassmen standing now, but I'm kind of between like a junior and senior. Y'all know what I mean. And I'm also part of this fellowship that has students across California in support of Proposition 16 on the California ballot. And it's really, it has a lot of students engaged and will impact higher education. So I'm here to, chime in, answer any questions that you may have, and also hopefully like engage in a really interesting discussion.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us, Grace. I guess I'll go ahead and get started with us, which is just to ask you to explain a little bit for everyone about which Proposition 16 is and what it concerns.
So on the ballot, you know, the one that, you know, all of us or some of us will choose to fill out, this proposition will repeal Prop 209. And what does that mean? Repealing Prop 209 is going to be one way to instate affirmative action decision making, and that will allow gender and race conscious decision making, or allow it to be used as a tool for legislators to enact affirmative action policy. Now that's, what's the text say, but I think that policy and practice of how it's going to impact like you and I, how it's going to impact students, workers, is a lot more broad. So right now there's a statewide ban on affirmative action, but there is a Supreme Court federal ruling for it to be enacted. So for example, San Jose State is an equal opportunity employer. And there are a lot of institutions that, in California and ones that we grew up in have instated some sort of maybe affirmative action or equal opportunity plan to recruit, retain, and, provide resource too. So that's kind of like the bigger answer, but definitely there's a lot of robust discussion and debate over this proposition.
Thank you for sharing all that. I know that for some folks, it can seem really confusing. Can you share a little bit about, if voting yes, what would that entail, and voting no, what that would entail? Because I think reading propositions can be really, really hard. And so as people are filling things out, right, it can get really confusing. Can you share a little bit about what a vote yes might mean and what a vote no might mean?
Yeah, and right now I'm personally taking 8 courses trying to get to the graduation line. A lot of people, and just reading these ballot packets feel like another homework assignment.
Yeah.
Like, right, trying to take the time to like see like how will this actually apply. So a yes vote to repeal 209, a yes vote on Proposition 16 will allow affirmative action to be used as a decision-making tool. And this will impact everything from higher education, government contracting, hiring, and funding decisions. A no on Prop 209 will just mean that the state ban on affirmative action will continue to exist. But as I said before, there is a federal ruling. So this is, allowing a, statewide push to instate affirmative action to make our systems more equitable.
I kind of want to follow up on that question. So I'm on like I don't know if y'all watched The Social Dilemma on Netflix, but I'm kind of on that like mind track right now. And so I guess I want to see if you can kind of rationalize who are the people who are like saying yes and why, and who are the people saying no and why, because these groups are being really polarized by the media.
Yeah, and to me, like all of these propositions, not just Prop 16, I'm also looking at, as a student, who is funding both the, yes and both the no. And, money speaks. And I think that's really important for some students who might not understand, what this policy words mean, but they can understand why are these people supporting it and why are they not, and how do I align, and where do questions still linger. So a lot of the opposition stems from definitely federal opposition of affirmative action stemming from, you know, the Harvard Supreme Court case. I would say a lot of the opposition is coming from Silicon Valley, where there is a lot of even Asian Americans, as or, you know, APID community members that are not in support, because we know that Asians in the United States have the most you know, diverse kind of economical, I don't know how to explain it, but like diverse economical challenges, right? Like our ethnic bracket. So definitely, like, a lot of folks are saying that they, you know, there's definitely a big myth against how affirmative action will impact Asian students and workers. And the data has shown that since the enactment of Prop 209, that rates of Asian Americans went down in our institutions, and that affirmative action policies benefit, right? And but also at the same time, I feel like this is an opportunity, a stepping stone to talk about like what disaggregated data will mean for better policy making. So definitely, like, on the side of like who is supporting this proposition, I mean, a lot of our legislators, a lot of our state leaders, our governor supports it. The California Democratic political party is funding it, and we live in a Democratic supermajority in California. That, you know, is like leading a lot of like the legislature and policy making. So I guess passing this proposition will alleviate another excuse that policymakers have, or, you know, not excuse, I'm sorry, I'm going on a tangent. But it will, you know, alleviate another barrier to making equitable funding decisions, hiring, contracting, admissions, you know. So yeah, I think those are kind of like the two sides, but definitely at least like the fellowship, it's, you know, a big push from students across the three public higher education systems, private, and definitely a very broad and diverse coalition of support.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's cool. I think you know, we have a lot of Asian like students, APID identified students who, you know, might be listening. And I think, you know, particularly, you know, speaking for myself as an East Asian, and having parents who are immigrants, there are probably a lot of students who are in kind of the same boat I am, where my parents don't agree with affirmative action, and they think that it harms trans people. And it's been, you know, a series of, you know, complicated conversations with them to help them understand, one, that affirmative action does not target Asian people. That's not the point of affirmative action. And two, that it actually, by increasing opportunities for Black, brown folks, Indigenous folks, people of color, one, this is trying to counter systemic racism, right? And two, this actually improves our institutions and our workplaces. Diversity of identities makes schools, makes government agencies better at what they do. So kind of the broader perspective of like, you know, this isn't meant to harm Asian communities. This is meant to improve our institutions and erase systemic racism to an extent. Obviously can't erase all of it, but it's meant to, you know, be a progressive step forward and not, you know, harming other communities.
Yeah, I definitely resonate with that. Oh, sorry, Carl.
No, you're good. You're good. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I resonate with that. I went to a webinar for fighting against anti-Asian hate with Young Leaders for America and Civic Leadership USA, and there are a lot of people in the chat who were like fighting about affirmative action. There was a group, I think it was Chinese for affirmative action, and then there were folks who were like saying that they were misrepresenting and that you know, they weren't for it. And I think that the problem with that is because of this culture of pitting minority groups against each other and making it seem like our liberation isn't collected, that it's not that it's one versus the other rather than it being both.
Yeah, Pearl, did you want to add?
That was basically exactly what I was going to say. But I've also noted that we talked about this in a previous podcast, but I was going to say from my personal experience, when I was in high school, I did go to a lot of APID identifiers, like really diverse group. And I remember when we were applying for colleges, I remember like them saying things like, oh, like they kind of act like, I guess because there were some people were applying out of state where affirmative action is a thing, and they felt that like us Asians, we have really high GPAs, we work really hard, but it feels like for us it's like a little bit more competitive to get in, rather you know, minority case or like we are minorities, but minorities who face more disadvantages than us, if that makes sense. So I remember like going through high school and I remember believing it till for like a few years. So like this conversation and this thing being on the ballot has kind of opened my eyes a lot. That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, I think that, you know, concerning what you brought up, Harl, like I also, you know, I grew up in like the Cupertino area of San Jose and just surrounded by Asian folks. And I don't know if we necessarily talked directly about affirmative action. We must have, because Prop 209 happened. But uh, we definitely talked about whether like Asians have an advantage or a disadvantage applying to college and that kind of stuff. Um, and you know, I think kind of the homogenous ecosystem that I was in, like it created this environment where it was like I was just surrounded by a lot of East Asians, and we just all had opinions about being Chinese or Japanese. And we were forgetting about the fact that there are so many other people within the Asian diaspora, many of whom are disadvantaged. You know, like Southeast Asians, Pacific Islanders particularly, are underrepresented in higher education. Um, so you know, affirmative action type policies are actually beneficial for them rather than you know, against them. But two, when we talk about affirmative action, a lot of people think that when folks say affirmative action, they mean that race will be the only indicator of whether you get in or not. And they will say, well, it's better to be, you know, a person of color than it is to get good grades or to do sports. And it's like, no, that's not true. Like, race is one of the factors that gets considered, along with your GPA, along with your extracurriculars, along with your socioeconomic status, along with, you know, like this other stuff. Like, you know, if you really want to get into the nitty gritty about what's fair and unfair about college applications, particularly on a national level, just look at legacy students. Legacy students have a way more unfair advantage than race does in applying to colleges, you know, and you can look at, you know, historically, you know, like Ivy League colleges like Harvard and stuff, they have an outrageously large percentage of legacy students that get accepted. And nobody talks about legacy students like that's an unfair advantage, you know. Sorry, that was a tangent also, but yeah.
I mean, thank you, Chris, for touching on that. I was about to share, you know, often, I mean, you know, kind of connecting to what was already shared, I didn't think about, you know, affirmative action. It's very confusing in its essence, right? Because the APIDA community does get kind of smashed together, right? And it wasn't until I got into undergrad that I realized that Islanders only graduate college, and if that's only if they make it, right, at a 3% rate. And so, for immigrant, first generation Islander students, right? And I fell into that category of being an immigrant, semi first generation Islander Desi woman. Whenever I would apply, counselors would be like, you should definitely, check these boxes. And I was like, well, I was planning to anyway, but like that kind of, we're going to get you there, right? The expectation was always that you're going to go to college, but the conversations that were being had, I didn't quite understand it in college, right? And I think when Prop 209 was, being kind of talked about, I didn't really understand the conversation. And I'm really glad that now with Prop 16 that we're having these conversations in this way, right? Especially knowing what's happened over the summer, I think a lot more folks are paying attention. So I'm really, really glad this prop is there along with all the other props, right? Because they're all important in their own way. But Grace, I would love to kind of hear your perspective of like, you've been kind of working in this fellowship and talking about Prop 16. When you're talking to folks, right, what are 3 things that you really want to touch upon so that folks can really like, when you have to do that elevator pitch, right? And as people are like thinking on election day, right, if you haven't registered to vote, you could still go vote in person, right? And if you're sitting on that mail-in ballot, please like do it now. But what are those maybe 3 key things for folks to kind of remember, right? Because it gets very confusing, but also, folks are still making their decisions.
I should have like a pad or something so that I don't like lose my train of thought. But
sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, that's definitely what I've been trying to communicate across. So, I think that the first one is this ballot measure. Again, is not. First of all, it's not even requiring affirmative action plans to be instated. So it's actually, to me, a very passive and not revolutionary policy, and really like long overdue. So there's a lot of institutionalized ways to break down some of the opposition or myths. One is that racial quotas are banned under the Constitution. So that's definitely a lot of fear of a lot of people. But secondly, I just want to amplify Anoop's revealing of that this issue has been used to kind of sow divisions and like pit communities against each other. And the PETA community inherently benefits from anti-Blackness. And so I don't think that this is an issue where it's like we should try to come out and say that, we deserve, admissions or access to resources or a way to reach financial mobility for ourselves and our families. Something that like we're entitled to. I think we all need students need to all practice a healthy sense of entitlement. But that lastly, this is a ballot measure. This is a piece of policy, but it's again not gonna be a way to end systemic racism or like end these great systemic disparities. And a lot of students are disenfranchised and not going to be able to participate and, vote on, repealing 209. So electoral politics aside, the last point I want to make is that there's a fine line between diversity and tokenism, and a lot of the legislators and policymakers pushing this, I hope that they will recognize that and then move accordingly.
Thank you so much for sharing, Grace. That was quite a bit that we just covered. are there, as folks are listening, thank you all for listening out there. Where can they kind of go to get, a resource or two that you could share, if folks want to kind of do more research on Prop 16?
Well, I mean, folks can stay involved and get involved and stay informed through all the Yes on Prop 16 social media channels. There's definitely going to be a lot of opportunities and answering a lot more questions that I could do in this podcast. And also, if folks want to drop off a ballot on campus, they can do so at Dudley Hall, I think. Dudley and the Villages. Let me just make sure, hold on. Yeah, Dudley and the Villages. And I hope everyone's doing okay, everyone listening. Like, I don't know who they are, but I'm just like, thank you so much for listening. And thank you to the four of you for, oh my gosh, like putting together this right now, these critical connections. I hope you all stay hydrated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, Grace, so much. I really appreciate you making some time to for us to be able to ask some questions about Prop 16. I think a lot of our students, whether they can or can't vote or haven't voted, are probably also in households where they have family members or friends who will be voting. And so if you have already voted, if you can't vote for whatever reason, but you have a family member who is voting, have that conversation with them about Prop 16, because particularly for the APIDA community, it can be a very divisive issue.